Hi, how you doing? My name is Joshua Young. I am a chef instructor here at Skagit Valley College. And today's demo, we are going to be making consommé, chicken consommé as a matter of fact. And our yield for today's demo is 2 quarts. So let's go through our mise en place first, and then we're going to go through the preparation. Today, our mise en place of our food is we have 4 ounces of egg whites. We have 2 ounces of lean ground chicken. We have 4 ounces of onions, julienne, 2 ounces of celery, and 2 ounces of julienne carrots. Now you're gonna say, Chef, I've seen other consommé recipes where they use the mirepoix that is diced or chopped. Well, I like to use my consommé mirepoix julienne. Why? Because you're making a raft. And the raft is going to clarify your consommé. When you're making a raft across an ocean, this raft is no different than any raft that has to be sea-bearing and float on water. So when you're making a raft to go across, say, the Puget Sound to Friday Harbor, do you want a raft that's made of stones and mud? Or do you want a raft that's made out of twigs and julienne vegetables that weave and provide strength in your raft? I think the answer to that is julienne, and I believe that the consommé that I come up with is stronger because of the julienne vegetables. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our egg whites and we're going to put them in the bowl, and everything should be nice and cold, and we're going to whip them. And if you whip them till they're nice and frothy. And you notice as I'm whipping that my arm is not moving, it is only my wrist that is moving the whip. You do that to save your arm strength, to save energy, because if you do this, your whole arm is moving and you're working too hard. So what you want to do is you want to move your wrist. Just move your wrist back and forth till you get a nice frothy egg white. See how nice and frothy that is? And what you're doing is you're whipping the albumin and the proteins, and you're whipping them and stretching them out to open them up. When they open up like that, they're going to absorb more impurities. So I have my whipped egg whites. I have my ground chicken that I'm going to put in there. I'm going to put my carrots. I'm going to put my celery, and then I'm going to put my onions. Then what I do is I mix it all, and I coat it very well with my egg whites. I want to make sure that those egg whites completely cover all of my mirepoix. I don't want any mirepoix that is not covered in egg whites. And what I would recommend, and here's a little tip, if you can do this step right here the night before, and let the mirepoix and the egg whites and the chicken kind of rest together, macerate a little bit, I find that your consommé becomes fuller flavored and a little clearer. So now we're going to pour the mirepoix egg white meat mixture into cold stock. All right, my stock is not hot, it is ice cold. It is the same temperature as my mirepoix, and I'm just going to pour it in there like this. Make sure all of it gets in there. And then I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to stir. Now here is the key. You are to stir the entire time until the stock gets too hot. And how I know the stock is too hot? It's too hot for me to touch. It's really the only way. You have to continue to stir and stir while this is happening, because you don't want the egg whites. What's going to happen if you don't stir is the egg whites that are heavier than the liquid is going to sink to the bottom of the pot. And when it sinks to the bottom of the pot, what are you going to get on the bottom of the pot? You're going to get burnt egg whites, and you're not going to get a clear stock. So you want to make sure that those egg whites are floating throughout your stock as you're heating it up. And the only way to do that is stirring. The other reason you stir is you're starting a convection. A convection is something, like think of like a convection oven. In a convection oven, the air moves around and around and around and around. Well, what's going to happen right now is once the raft floats to the top, you're going to have a convection underneath that raft, and that the convection is going to hold those impurities, and those impurities, once it reaches it's going to go around and around, and those impurities, once it reaches the top, it's going to hit that raft and stay there. And then the impurity, then your stock will become clear. The direct definition of a consommé is a clear, fortified stock. Now, this is a longer, you don't want to rush this. You want to heat this up, and then you want to turn your consommé down to a simmer. You never want to boil your consommé, because if you boil the consommé, generally your raft is going to break. If your raft breaks in the ocean, what's going to happen? Boom, you're going to sink to the bottom of the sound and you're going to die unless you're a great swimmer. On a consommé, it's not so deadly, but what's going to happen is that your raft is going to break, and with that, all of the impurities that are on that raft are going to sink to the bottom, and you're going to have to start all over again, which means you're going to have to strain your stock, cool down your stock, because you, again, have to start with ice-cold stock. You want to make sure that your stock is ice cold, and then you have to start all over again. Consommé is a pretty amazing soup because it takes some advanced technique, which is this raft, to do it. And what I like to say to my students is, chefs or cooks make soup, and chefs know how to make consommé. And if you can see right now, you see that stock, you see that you're starting to get a white foam on the top. See how that's starting to form, that white foam? That's my egg whites, homie. And what that is that means my egg whites are starting to cook and form, and I'm going to want to continue to stir. I just touched it. It's barely warm, but I know I got the chill off, so I know I'm doing all the right things. Now, your mirepoix is your onions and your carrots and your celery. It is all julienne. Now, if you don't like onions, if you think onions are too strong, use leeks. If you want a very strong carrot flavor, use more carrots. But the same rules for mirepoix for consommé is the same rules for mirepoix for stock. Generally, it's about 50% onions, 25% carrot, and 25% celery. Because remember, the carrot, if you put too many carrots in, what's going to happen, people? Your stock is going to be too orange, because the color of the carrots are going to leach into the stock. So you're going to have more of an orange stock. So I'm going to let it stop stirring for a second. And you see how you can almost see, you can definitely see the white starting to come up. And it's getting nice and warm right now. So you want to continue to stir. Never stop stirring. Chefs will tell you that you don't have to stir your consommé. Has never made a proper consommé. This is the main part, is that you have to stir. You do not want your egg whites sinking to the bottom, so you really have to stir. Have I ever not stirred my consommé? No. I don't even know what would happen if I didn't, and I don't want to find out. The mentors and the people that have done this soup, this is the way they've always done it. Who am I to go and change it? Escoffier was the first chef to write down how to make a consommé. And when Escoffier made his consommé, he clarified it. Instead of using egg whites, he used caviar. Yeah, he used caviar. So it was quite a different time. You can tell it's getting hot by the amount of white that's coming up to the top. Let me touch it again. And it's getting nice and hot, and it's getting sticky. So that means my egg whites are starting to coagulate and cook. So it's almost hot enough where you're going to stop. And the raft appears almost as if magic. That is hot to the touch. And now you can see the whites on the top getting starting to form. You will notice things starting to float. That is the egg white starting to float, and the convection is starting to form. Once your raft is fully formed, then you're going to want to make a vent in the weaker part of the raft so you can start to baste your raft. And once we have that, I will show you how to baste your raft. All right, so the raft is about halfway formed, and you can see, you press on it, the whole top of the raft shakes. You get some weaker points, but it's getting there, and it's just about to rise up. All of a sudden, it's like it's there. It wasn't there, and now, boom, it is there. And you have all this beautiful vegetables on top. You have vegetables going all the way through. The vegetables that are in contact with the stock, they will be basted and they will be cooking the entire time, but the vegetables on top will not have any contact with the stock. So therefore, you are going to need to baste those vegetables. And once I have a fully formed raft, I will show you how to make a vent into the raft, and then I will show you how to baste the raft. See, it's even stronger now. You want a really, really strong raft. You don't want to add, now you're going to think to yourself, Chef, if I add more egg whites, will I get a clearer stock? Yes, but you'll also get a weaker flavored stock. The more egg whites you put in there, the less flavor you have. One of the things that I will also tell you is that when you're making your consommé, always try and use a broth, a brodo, or a fortified stock. A stock just as it is a little too weak, and you're not going to get the flavor that you want because the raft somewhat takes away some of the flavor. So now, boom, you see, look at that raft. That is one big solid raft, and I got a nice raft, a nice simmer. You never, ever, ever want to break your raft, and you never want to boil your consommé. So as you can see, my bubbles are coming up here. So I'm going to make a little hole in the raft by using my tongs. You're going to see, look at that, look at that. Look at that beautiful, beautiful raft. And even though it's bubbling, your raft is so solid that you don't have to worry about that raft breaking. There you go. So now you see the stock. So there is your, right there is your vent. And you're going to start basting the top of your raft. Take your ladle very gently. See how clear, beautiful that is? And just let that go for a little bit. Just let that go and let it simmer. It's a beautiful, beautiful consommé. And see how nice and solid that raft is? And see, you got the movement of the stock. That's the convection that I was talking about. You want to get that movement of the stock. You want to get that movement of your impurities. So all those impurities get stuck to your raft. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I wish video had smell-o-vision, because right now I'm just getting a nice, beautiful whiff of the aroma of this consommé, and it is absolutely gorgeous. So see, now you got a nice, it's almost clear. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to simmer it for about 30-35 minutes. All right, we're back, and now we are going to strain our consommé. There is no fast way to strain this. The consommé is a labor of love. And as you can see, it's still simmering away. No real harm involved. But consommé is a labor of love. You have this raft right here, and all your impurities are trapped in this raft. If you agitate this raft too much, all those impurities are going to go off the raft and go back in your stock, and you're going to have a cloudy stock again. So there is no fast way to do this. You cannot speed this. There is no shortcuts. Trust me, if there was a shortcut for this, I'd know it by now. So I have my chinois, which is a fine mesh sieve, my chinois with a cheesecloth that's wet. So I get all the fibers off it. It is in my bain-marie, which is going to be the receptacle of my consommé. I will turn off my stock, and I just do it the ladle one by one. And you're like, oh my God, that's a long time. Yeah. Chef, why don't you get a bigger ladle? Well, if I had a bigger pot, I would use a bigger ladle. But because if I used any bigger of a ladle, I would upset my raft too much, and I would not get a cloudy, I would disrupt my raft, and then my stock would become cloudy. So I want to make sure that I do it the right way. In this instance, trust me, if there was a shortcut on this one, I would know it, I would tell you, and I would say this is the way to do it. But I've tried to find a shortcut, and there is none. And look at how clear that consommé is. That is just one gorgeous looking clear broth. And this can go for lots of things. Soups, matzo ball soup for my Jewish friends out there. It is a great base for matzo ball soup. My bubby would love it. Chicken noodle soup, or just on its own. If you're not feeling well and you got chest congestion, a little warm chicken broth will never hurt anybody. The last thing you're going to do after it is strained is you're going to season it. And I will season it with salt, no pepper. Pepper is too many impurities, will make my stock cloudy. And I will only use a pure salt or kosher salt. And so I would season it with that. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. My name is Joshua Young, and I'll see you again soon.